Good day, traders. Edge with high-tech trading analysis. Hey, today I'm going to talk about the features and parameters of my volume profile sessions indicator. Now I'm going to try to keep this video short and sweet and specifically talk just about the features and how we set them and configure them in our properties. Currently, we're looking at the volume profile set on a session of daily. So every day we see a volume profile of the volume that happened across the day. We're currently looking at October 11th, 9:30 in the morning. Well, this bar will close at 9:30 here in another minute and a half. And this is developing as the day goes and the bars move. These values for today will continue to develop as the day goes on. Now, you're going to see several icons up here in the top of NinjaTrader's toolbar. All of my indicators, I place an icon, a drop-down icon in all of my indicators because I'm looking for quick and easy access to turn things off, turn things on, display things differently without always having to either click up here on your indicators or right-click indicators and go into properties all of the time. I provide a drop-down menu for quick, easy access to this. The first thing we're going to notice on the drop-down is profile types. There are two types of profile. One I call VPO and one we call TPO. So a TPO is a market profile terminology for time-priced opportunity. Now, from a volume profile standpoint, instead of time, we're looking at volume. So a volume priced opportunity. The TPO portion of this particular indicator, as of today, is still in beta, and I'm working on that. But I'm real close, and that will be a part that will work before the end of the year. Right now, we're talking about volume. We're going to leave this on volume. Now, we have session types. This is for a session. We're looking at a profile for a rolling profile for a given period of time across the entire chart. And these are the time periods that I give you. We have daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or contract. As we can see, we're looking at daily right now. So when the day starts and I'm looking at extended trading hours, I'm in Central Standard Time in the United States. So my week begins Sunday night at 5 p.m. and that lasts until Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. which at that time we go down for an hour and then it comes back up Monday afternoon at 5 p.m. and goes to Tuesday at 4 p.m. So those are the sessions that I'm looking at and creating profiles for. If I change this to weekly and we reload the data, now we're looking at weekly profiles. So this is Monday of this week. This is our developing weekly profile. This was last week's. I've got the ability to always show the previous week, so we could show the previous week as well. We can do this for monthly. We can do this for contract. Let's just show that. If we look at contract and we reload our data, now I've got to go back some, but September 17th was our rollover. So this is where my profile starts and is now going to develop until the next contract rollover. This was my previous contract profile. So rather than have a bunch of indicators where you got to use one for one time frame and one for another, just this is, you can set this up to look at anything that you want to look. I can't say that. You can set this up. One second. Okay, sorry about that. Got interrupted there for a minute. Coming back, we've got things set back on weekly so that I can see things a little better. We discussed the profile types. Again, these are the session types that are currently available within the indicator. Now, as we can see on each of the profiles, we're displaying, give me a good profile here. Let's take this one. We're displaying a high, a value area high and a value area low, a midpoint, a VWAP, and the POC, as well as the previous day's close, and I had to have mentioned the high and the low, right? Each of those are individually selectable to turn on or off through the drop down. So if I don't want to see the histogram and all I want to see is just my levels, I can do that. If I want to, on the previous levels, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if I want to show those lines extended across the entire day, I can do that as well. I can have them the width of the histogram, or I can have them extend throughout the day. So let's take that a little further. Let's come back and show this at the bottom of this. Again, I got a little ahead of myself, but we're talking about being able to show and hide each of the individual lines and or the histogram. And then I just showed you that we can have our lines or our levels be equal to the width of our histogram, or we can extend them out to the day. I can extend them a little further here in a minute. I'll show you a little further than that, but let's go back. I've got a reset down here, reset all on and reset all off. If I turn everything off and start from scratch, can come in and show you a little of how dynamic this might be able to be rather than just because of the volume profile. You can see even without the histogram, we show you the high and the low in the previous close. So if you don't want to look at a lot of clutter and on a couple charts you're only wanting, let's add the midpoint to this. And then let's maybe add VWAP to this. Whoops, wrong icon. So now I only want to look at this on a particular chart. Well, it's very flexible in that we can look at anything individually or all or none. Let's just turn everything back on. Okay, as well as the histogram and our levels, I also give you some summary information down below. This tells me that this day was Thursday, October 5th. We had 551,532 contracts traded on that day. I had a range of $1.38. In this particular instrument, it looks like each penny is a tick, so I had 138 ticks. I had a rotational factor of 10 to the plus side. We'll give the net change for the day. So even though we had a range of 138 from high to low, we had a positive change of 85 cents that day, and that was 1.7% to the upside for that day. Now, this top information and bottom information is not part of the volume profile. I'll turn that off, but everything that you're seeing on the chart now, other than these bars, works with any kind of bars. Oh no, I don't really do red and green. Just excuse me. I don't know why NinjaTrader doesn't keep my default when I change that back. We'll just look at it like that. Let's continue on with the drop down. So I can turn the current on or off. So if I don't want to look at the current, I can turn the current off. That way it removes some clutter. I give more weight to previous values, whether it be in profile or VWAP or anything, than I do in the current developing values. Not that the current developing can't be important. I just might give more relevance to previous values than I do that of developing. I mean, those that are developing, it's only 9:30 in the morning. Where those levels are at right now for the day is not going to be where these levels are going to be at the end of the day. So again, I would, I'll move on. Well, let's go back. We're not going, what did I just turn off? Summaries. I'm going to turn current off. At that point, I can extend my previous lines, which will extend them all the way across the chart. So now I'm looking at the previous values of the day, and this is more kind of how I would look at it. This might be a good time to show you that in the properties themselves, that I have histogram direction. So right now, all of the histograms are starting at the session begin and pointing to the right. So the direction is to the right. I can also put, whether it be the previous or the current, and each one of those is individual, on the right or the left. So let's say that I didn't want my current values there on the left because they were getting in the way. I could put them on the very far right, current, on the very far right hand part of my chart. And I can still be looking at my price levels for yesterday without today being inherently in the way, but still look at today's values as well. Now I can put this on, I can also, let's go back into the indicators properties. And then instead of the far right, we can have the direction of that go left, meaning that I'm going to start at the very last bar. So the current can be displayed here, here, or here. The previous can be displayed at the beginning of the session, pointing to the right, or the end of the session, pointing to the left. So let's come back into the indicator properties. Sessions, let's change this back to the default, and at the same time we can also see that we have a histogram. In our drop down up there, the first thing that we saw was the profile type and the daily. So we don't need to come into the parameters or the indicator properties to change those. We can change those on the fly through the drop down. These down below, most of these are not. Most everything else has to be changed through the properties. The histogram width. We need to fix the width of our histogram to something, whether that be pixels or a percentage of the session or however that is. I'm looking at possibly utilizing percentage of the sessions, and I'm experimenting with that right now. But for now, you're looking at a fixed pixel width. By default, I've got this set to 180, and it looks like exactly how we were looking at this. If you wanted this to be bigger, or smaller, we just adjust the pixel width of our histogram and now it becomes bigger. Now, one problem with having it too big is that when you start looking at more data, things start crunching together. So what you have to do is find out where that perfect medium is for you, where you crunch your chart the most, and yet everything still looks okay for you. If we show the full extension lines, you can see how the lines bleed over into the next day because this was a fixed width. I just found, and the reason why it's set to 180 is I found that to be a happy median for the sessions, that it still doesn't, I can still squinch the chart and it not interfere, but yet when I take the chart and make it much smaller, it's still big enough to see my low volume and my high volume nodes and the particular levels that are associated with them. So now if we go back into our properties, we can change the histogram color. Now there are two colors here. We have an entire histogram from our high to our low, and then we have a value area set. We can change these to whatever we want. If you want them the same color, make them the same color. Depending on the background of your chart, the color of the bars that you're using, you know, everybody has a different aesthetics on how they want it to look. I have one on a black chart somewhere. Give me just a second. Let's get rid of this so I can open that. Well, here, the easiest thing to probably do is just let's duplicate the chart we have. And let's load the black template on it. This is an old template. Yeah, that worked fine. Now, if we go into the properties of this, you can see we had to change several things you would have to change. You'd want to change the, let's go in and look. So here we have our outer histogram. We have our VA color of steel blue. We had to change our label text to white. We can change the width of the line and the color of the line and the style of the line. So if I want these to be 1 instead of 2, by default they're dashed 2 and these colors down below. You can change them to whatever you like. In all of my indicators, one thing you're going to see here, up here you see the names of my indicators across the top. Now, kind of the problem in NinjaTrader is if we come to here and we nuke this out, this messes with the name over here in the configured. It removes it from the chart, but it kind of removes it from here too. What I've done in all of my indicators is if you don't want to see the title, and there's an additional property here under visual called hide text label. Let's just check that, click apply, and you'll no longer see that label in the top, but yet everything else is going to be, you're not going to find any abnormalities behind how it's configured here and or when we're in the properties or anywhere else. This toolbar icon down here, I put an icon in your toolbar. I give you the ability to change the background color so that you can match the theme of your, or the skin of whatever theme it is that you're using. Just remember that you want these to be different enough so that when I middle click on this icon, I'm using my scroll bar, my scroll wheel, and I'm just clicking on it. That's set up for a middle click for me. Middle clicks on the icons that I place for all of my products, hide everything right then, right there. You'll notice that that is grayed. You can see a difference in the color between that and when it's on, so that from a quick visual standpoint, you can see that. So I just wanted to show you, you can change the colors. You know, down here we made the text. It looks nice on a black chart too. I just don't. It actually looks good enough. It made me think about changing, but I'm not going to do that right now. So let's go back into our properties. Once you set this up once, you're probably not going to have to come in and set it up much further. So anything below the levels is all default NinjaTrader type information. We covered all of this. We have the color of the histograms as well as the opacity of the background. So you've got a ton of choices on whatever colors you want to make this, as well as the value area percent has to be set within the indicator properties as well. By default, our value area is set to 0.7 or 70% of the total volume from the POC. All of our levels are changeable down here. As a matter of fact, I might have to change this midpoint. It's a little too close to the color of the POC, and I'm getting old and starting to blend together. Outside of that, I believe we've covered all of this. In the very bottom, it will always show you the version of the product you're on and give you my website. So now let's look in the drop down and make sure we haven't missed anything there. We've got our profile types, all of our individual lines, current, always show current. Always show current comes into place really when you're looking at a smaller chart. If I was looking at, let's just change this to a 5-minute chart. So if I'm looking at a 5-minute chart, there's so many bars on here, I might only be looking at this many. Remember, our profile starts at the beginning of the session, or in the current standpoint can start here and point this way, or starts here and this way. Once we get past the current session and the width that we have set for the histogram, it no longer shows on our chart. I give you the ability to set that to always show. So no matter what bar you're on, you're going to see that current. Now, it's the same thing for the previous as well. Let's go back to a 15-minute chart here. You can see this loads. I've got about 180 days set on this chart, and you can see this loads. I've got most all of my indicators on here, and you can see this loads very fast. Even using that, well, several of my indicators use a 1-minute secondary data series for calculations. What was I going to show you here? We were going to always show previous. we can see how the always show previous can interfere with the previous profile at times. But if it's not on and you're stuck in a situation like this, once you get past the width of the profile, you no longer see it. But if I want to see it, I can. So it all depends on what you want to see, the width of your chart, what your intervals are. You know, I put all the options here because there are times I use them all. Extend current. Going to extend current just like the previous. The extend previous only extends the previous session through the end of the chart. So it doesn't extend anything beside the previous session will extend. Now, the minute this session closes and a new one starts, this will extend and this would no longer be extended. The difference between the two is full session lines extends all of the previous, even the current previous, to the full length of the session rather than the width of the histogram. Okay, so let's not extend that. Set that about there. We'll turn our always previous off. I can actually even not show any of the previous and only show the current. So you can turn the current on or off, the previous on or off, but the previous on or off turns everything off. I'm considering turning everything off except for the very last previous so that I can keep those lines on my chart, but it hasn't come to that much of a need yet. I think that's everything. As always, if you have any other question, you can always reach out on Skype or just leave a message below. Thanks.